Greetings. We're going to go ahead and get started, even though I know there are probably some folks grabbing some coffee or making their way up here with having conversations along the way. But in the interest of time, we want to go ahead and get started because we have a lot of wonderful things we want to celebrate and talk about this morning. So thank you for being here and for being part of this household of faith. That is how I look at this gathering, as a household meeting. You know, sometimes if you're parents, sometimes you need to get together with your children and have a family meeting. And we are the household of God, and everyone in the household has responsibility and needs information, and we want to be as transparent as we can be as we work together in ministry. And so that's part of what this meeting is about. So let me open us with a word of prayer, and then we will move forward. Let's pray. Gracious God, we thank you already for a powerful hour of worship for those of us who have already been here for a while this morning. And for those who have yet to worship, we offer ourselves in expectation and knowing that you are with us. We pray for all of the children and youth who are in Sunday school right now and all of those adults who are devoting themselves to study and learning your ways. We long, O God, to be your faithful church, to be your people. And so in this time together, may we get a sense and a vision of where we are today and a sense and a vision of where you're calling us to be in the days ahead. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Okay, so as I said, this is just going to be sort of an overview, a snapshot of where we are as West End United Methodist Church on whatever today is, November 18th, 2018. And I'm going to pull up the agenda, JL, the next. There it is. So here are some of the things we're going to be talking about and hearing from today. Alan Horner, who's our chair of ministry table, will follow me up here and share some information with you, some statistics and some interesting things about what's happening in our church today. We'll hear from the trustees, the finance committee, from the spiritual formation group and some of the opportunities for spiritual growth and development in the next year. Someone will come and share about our building and our property and some of the updates on that, since we are on the tail end of an extensive capital campaign over the past few years. We want an update on all of that. We'll touch on worship and some things that are exciting coming up in worship. And last year, we highlighted some different ministries. And so I just want to name the fact that there are many, many, many wonderful ministries happening in this congregation, especially our outreach ministry. So I don't want you to look at this and say, well, they didn't talk about outreach at all. Since we highlighted some of that last year, we wanted to focus on some of these other things today. But I want to name just a few things that now that I've been here almost a year and a half, some things I want to celebrate from the time that I've been here. This past year, we've had some major staff changes. We had 3 positions to turn, and we welcomed Henry Ambrose as our property manager, and he'll be speaking a little bit later, so you'll get to hear from Henry. We're so thrilled with who he is and how he goes about doing that work. And then we welcomed Maggie Jarrell and Stacy Harwell-Dye, and they're here this morning. And some of you have not had a chance to meet them or welcome them or to differentiate them. They get called by each other's names a lot. So Maggie, why don't you stand over here? And Stacy, you stand over here. If you could always wear green, that would be helpful. Maggie is our new pastor of children and their families and has just hit the ground running and is actually going to run right after this to do her job among the children's Sunday school classes. She's in the process of becoming ordained as a deacon in the United Methodist Church, and so we pray for her and support her in that journey. And you just really want to get to know Maggie. She's a lot of fun, even if she doesn't like chocolate. And Stacy Harwell-Dye is our pastor of missions and outreach, and she is an ordained deacon and moved here from Savannah and also has hit the ground running and has great vision and ideas for moving ahead and moving into new areas of outreach and ministry. And so I just wanted you to lay eyes on them and have a chance to welcome them once again officially and really invite you to take them out to lunch, get to know them. They're wonderful members of our staff. So, yeah, welcome you guys. I also want to celebrate one of the things that almost every Sunday we are baptizing children and welcoming new people into the church. This morning at the 11 o'clock service, we'll be baptizing an adult. And to me, that is a very outward and visible sign of God's work being done among us, that the family of God, the church of God is growing among us. And we're going to look at some of those numbers actually in a few minutes. But we've got new members joining, new people coming every Sunday to worship here at West End and to get to know who we are. So that's exciting, and it's our responsibility always to be mindful and looking around and introducing ourselves and making new connections with people. Even if we think maybe they've been a member forever, it's still important, if you don't know them, to reach out on Sunday morning. I've been thrilled to see new ways of connecting with our community this year. We made the decision to move our picnic, which had been so graciously hosted by the Shoals for many years, to see what it was like to have it here on the grounds as a way of being more visible in our community. And I think it was a great success and a lot of fun. And I think people walked by and came by and thought, oh, look at that. That church has got something going on. And then our Trunk or Treat, which was the second annual one hosted by the preschool. How many of you were at Trunk or Treat? Someone estimated we had 600 people, and a lot of them were from the community. And that is just tremendously exciting. So more opportunities to connect with our community. As we look ahead to 2019, I think probably the biggest thing that's on our minds is the way forward and what will happen in our denomination in February. And we've been very intentional about having conversations, small group conversations throughout the fall. About that, we have a really good team of folks who are helping to lead us through those. And we want to have, in January and February, many opportunities for prayer together. So we're talking now about having a prayer room that's available for us to be in prayer, and maybe live streaming that general conference in this room. So if you have any ideas about that, let us know. So we want to be prayerful and intentional and unafraid. That all shall be well. And we, as I said this morning in the sermon, we are called to be the church, and we will be. So let us continue in prayer together. And then as we've talked some as a staff and in ministry, part of what we want to focus on in the year ahead is deepening our spiritual life together and finding ways to go deeper in our faith and in our outreach in every area. So that word, growing deeper, is 2 words, I guess, is part of our theme for 2019. So that's a quick, brief overview from me, and I'm going to invite Alan Horner now to come forward and get us launched.
Good morning. Good morning. So I've been fortunate to be ministry table chair this year, and most of you know ministry table, what we do, but some of you don't. And really simply, the ministry table functions as the closest thing we've got to is our board of directors. It represents all areas of the church, all ministries, staff are on it, a lot of lay people are represented. You're going to hear from some of those people here in just the coming minutes. But everything tends to run up through ministry table, including things like our budget annually. And a lot of people try to bring things to ministry table where they want to get sort of the church's approval. And I did want to recognize briefly Revel Carroll was our ministry table chair last year. Revel, thank you for your service. And in 2019, Amy Lynch will be ministry table chair, and you'll be hearing a little bit more from Amy in just a minute. So we want to go over some statistics and give you an idea of what is going on in our church and the United Methodist Church overall. And Brandon Baxter gave us this slide back in the summer, if you were at any of the summer Sunday school sessions. This is the United Methodist Church viewpoint of membership. So from 2006 through 2015, overall membership of the United Methodist Church, you can see it's not really a trend that we're excited to talk about. Gone from 8 million to 7 million, and average worship has gone down as well. So that's the United Methodist Church. And we also know in Africa, places like Africa, there's tremendous growth. So if we showed this slide for, say, Europe or United States, it would be even more severe. Okay? On the other hand, at West End, our membership doesn't show a trend downward, so we're thankful for that. And we're basically flat, but we're up just a little bit. And this year, we're at a high for the last 10 years, so that's nice to see. Carol mentioned baptisms. You can see for the year to date, we're at 37, and that does not include this month and next month, so we think that's a good sign of young families joining the church and being involved, and hopefully that'll eclipse that number there. And if we look at new members through October, we're at 69. We'll have some more joining, and it's not a big upward movement, but hopefully we'll get above the last few years. Okay? Here's our average weekly attendance. Year to date, we're averaging 595 people coming in through the doors on Sunday morning, as we can measure that. And again, not much difference overall. If we break that down into early service, late service, and child care, the interesting thing is, and I think Revel pointed this out last year, early service has been going up over time. So more people are coming to the early service. Our weekly attendance, what this shows is a little confusing when you first look at it, but this is from 2015 through this year, and there's 3 different colored lines, and really they all kind of mirror the same trend. And what this shows just is how many people are coming each month, each week of each month. And what you see, this upward spike is Easter. And then you get a little bit of a lower point here through the summer, but not dramatically lower. Then we rise when we get to close to Advent time, and then it just drops off like maybe the last week of the year. So we're this black or dark gray line is the current year. So it lays on top of that fairly closely. Brandon's going to talk more about this in just a minute with some more explanations about this. This is Sunday school attendance, obviously, and don't like seeing this trend downward here in adult Sunday school attendance. There's some things that Brandon will explain that weren't included, and so the drop this year maybe is a little bit misleading. Children's Sunday school attendance is coming up. In youth, we have less youth right now, so a little bit of a downtrend there. Okay? So we'll have time at the end for questions and answers to any of the things that you hear about. So if you have questions, hold them to yourself, and there'll be appropriate time. So now we're going to hear from our trustees, from Elizabeth McGuire, who's our chair this year, as well as Karen Bryant, who's helped with plan giving.
This has been a very good year for the endowment. It is the first year that the endowment has topped $10 million. That is in part due to market gains and then also to a few generous bequests. For those of you who don't know, the endowment is broken up into about 40 different funds that are professionally managed by Morgan Stanley. Some of those funds are restricted, meaning that they are to be used at the donor's wishes, and then some of them are unrestricted and have more of a general purpose. With all the funds, however, they are invested with the long-term aim of a 5 to 8% return. That's after fees and expenses. we want to show you a little bit about what the endowment does. The endowment provides for initiatives outside of the operating budget. Thank you, JL. So you'll see some photos. Let me explain some of them. The rock work was important on this building. It needed to be refurbished. The stained glass hangings, the parking lot was resurfaced. The space that you're in was renovated. The playground has received a lot of renovations. The organ is maintained. The bathrooms have been renovated. In the gym, new lighting and floor resurfacing, and one more. New flooring in the youth room, concerts, and technology upgrades. Those are examples of all the things that the endowment does, and then so much more. There's a list of some things that this money is providing for. The scholarships is important. This year, so far, we've spent a little bit over $275,000, and almost half of that has gone to scholarships. So for all of this, we have the generations before us to thank. They've really provided us with a foundation for this church to go forward with. As trustees, it is our job to protect the corpus of this endowment and to make sure that it lasts. Once again, this year, the trustees voted for 2019 for 3.5% of the endowment to be available for funding initiatives. And that's been typical in recent years, 3.5%, so that was voted again this year for 2019. Perhaps our biggest achievement this year was a planned giving initiative. And Karen Bryant, who was one of our trustees, was very willing and generous with her time to take on and spearhead that initiative. She's done a tremendous job. She's going to talk to you about that in just a moment. But it is all about making sure that this endowment grows and lasts to provide for the church's missions and outreaches. When we were deciding to take that on, the planned giving initiative, we did a little bit of research in speaking to people about what had been done in the past, what worked, what didn't work. I spoke as a part of that research to Carol, and she told me that when she was the head of trustees and Michael Williams was here, that Michael Williams suggested that she put in her email signature, "Have you remembered West End in your will?" So it is in that spirit that I'm going to now turn it over to Karen Bryant.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. We have, over the last couple of months, launched our planned giving initiative, and hopefully you have, or you will, in the upcoming months, see the beginning results of that. Initially, we have named our endowment giving the Wesley Circle. We have prepared a brochure that we hope you'll take a look at as you have time, that talks about the endowment, what it does, and how you can be involved in the Wesley Circle. We have also added to the pledge card that hopefully all of you have received in the mail or seen online, a place where you can ask for more information about endowment giving, or let the church know that you have remembered West End in your will or other estate planning. In the upcoming months and year, you'll see some additional pieces or components of this initiative. We'll be expanding our current website material. There will be a dedicated time during the church year where we will talk about the Wesley Circle and what those gifts have done and mean for our church. We will celebrate, all of us will celebrate, likely through a luncheon or an event after the 11 o'clock service, the Wesley Circle gifts. And lastly, we are planning in the future for a workshop, an educational piece to help those who may not have prepared a will or who may want to update estate planning. We'll have some professionals in at the church to talk about ways to plan for your estate and charitable giving advantages. We hope that if you end up at the end of the year with a little extra money after you've made your gift to the general fund, that you'll think about a small gift to the endowment. And please consider remembering West End in your will or your estate planning, and let us know if you have questions or you've done so. Let us know on the pledge card or otherwise. We have all been so blessed by those who have made legacy gifts before us, and let us consider doing the same. Thank you all.
Emma Munderloh is chair of our Finance Committee, and Ashley Larmer from Faithful Giving.
Good morning. As Alan said, my name is Emma Munderloh, and I've had the opportunity to serve as finance chair this year. I've got a few quick slides. I hope you find this interesting. I want to share what we do as a committee, where the funding for this church comes from, and how that funding is used. I'll try not to bore you. It's only a few graphs. So here I just listed out, we've got 4 main responsibilities that we're charged with as a committee. The first one being monthly meetings where we review the financials of the church. We look at prior year actuals to current year actuals. We look at budget to actuals, lots of numbers. And Sandy Durbin is the financial director here, and she is a huge asset for us. She prepares all of our financial packets and just helps the meetings go smoothly. Our second responsibility is we draft the annual budget. That is in process right now. We have a balanced budget draft for 2019 that'll be going to the ministry table to be approved next month. Our third responsibility is to approve the payment for the church's apportionment to the conference that we make every year. And finally, as a subcommittee of the Finance Committee, we plan the annual Faithful Giving campaign, which Ashley Larmer gratefully chaired for us this year, and she'll be speaking to you in a moment. So this slide just kind of shows where our funding comes from. And I think it's interesting to see that 73% of the funding for West End comes from pledged giving. So I think that just hits home of how important that is, how important your estimate of giving is, and how important it is that we as a congregation support the church. 17% is non-pledged giving. That represents things like offering plate, just anything that's not a pledge that is given to the church. And then other represents special contributions, grants from trustees, things like that. Moving on, this is where our funding is used. I don't think anyone's surprised to see that 50% of the funding is used to pay for staff and the people that run the church. We have an incredible staff, and we're very fortunate to be able to pay them, and I think that's, with any good business, although the church is a nonprofit, that's important. 21% of the funding goes to pay for utilities and property. That's just general maintenance and upkeep of this building. And 17% is the conference apportionment. That is a number that is calculated and given to us by the conference every year, and we are happy to say that we paid that 100% over the past several years and plan to for 2019. And before we move off this slide, I do want to point out one thing y'all might be asking is, are there any debt payments? Weston's in a unique position in that we don't have any debt, which is something to celebrate. And so normally that would be a big chunk of the payments, but that's not something we have to worry about. We're in a good financial position from that perspective. This slide just shows you a little bit of historical information about revenues and expenses. This first column you'll see is September 30th of last year. Second column is September 30th of this year. And then the third column is budget. And you'll see that revenues are trending upwards just a little bit, but pretty flat. But you'll see expenses continue to grow. One thing that I will share that's a positive celebration is over here on the far right. As of year-to-date 9/30, our actual deficit is $272,335, which compares favorably to what we had budgeted. And you may be asking, why did we even budget for a deficit? Well, that's because we operate on a deficit for the first 11 months of the year. So if you'll go to the next slide, this is our giving by month. And so, yeah, until December, we have a deficit. So I thought that was interesting information to share with y'all. You know, a lot of people do give in December, but if you're able to give throughout the year, we would not be opposed. And December, that Q4 represents 23% of the giving, and then Q4 is 40%. So that just shows how important it is for planning purposes for you all to give us your estimate and tell us what do you plan to give in 2019, because it's stressful. You don't know if that money's going to come in or not. So, and then on this last slide, I just wanted to share a few budget highlights for 2019. Like I mentioned, we have a draft budget that's balanced. It was not easy to put together, but we got there. And Ministry Table will be reviewing that at their December meeting for approval. The draft has got $2.51 million in revenue coming in. How did we get to that number? We took pledge revenue from prior year and increased it by 2.5%. So we are hoping and praying for a 2.5% increase over last year. I mentioned the apportionment. We received that number from the conference, and that is a 4% increase over last year, and we have budgeted to pay that out at 100%. We have a 2% cost of living raise adjustment for the staff built in, and then mostly flat in other expense areas. And then the last thing, this is just kind of a public service announcement. Does anybody shop on Amazon? Can I get a show of hands? Anyone? So of those people that raise their hands, how many of you use Amazon Smile? Okay, wow, okay. I did not until recently, so I was guilty of not using it, and I get packages delivered probably twice a week, I'm embarrassed to say. So it's very easy to do. If you go to smile.amazon.com and select West End as your charity, it's a small amount, but if everyone who bought everything on Amazon would just do that one additional step, that could be a little piggy bank fund for a rainy day. So I just wanted to remind everyone about that a small change can make a big impact. So that's all I have. I wanted to invite Ashley Larmer up. She's going to share a little bit more specifically about the Faithful Giving campaign. So thank you.
Good morning, everybody. As Emma said, I'm Ashley Larmer, and I am chairing this year's Faithful Giving campaign and feel very honored to do so. And before I get started, I will say, if any of you are ever asked to serve on any of these committees or take on these roles, I would provide a word of encouragement to accept that. It'll stretch you and make you learn things about the church that you didn't know, and it's just been a great experience this year and the past year as well. So this morning, I just wanted to talk a little bit about our Faithful Giving campaign for 2019, a little historical data of where we've been, and an encouragement to ask you to participate. So here you'll see this chart describes the number of estimates that we have received from members over the last several years. And as you can see, there's been a bit of a downward trend that we're hoping to reverse and bring up that number of estimates that we receive and really increase the participation of our members. If you think about it, we're looking for a goal of 425 estimates, and with around 600 members coming to services every Sunday, that's a good portion of the number of people coming to church every Sunday that we hope will go on and give us that estimate for our planning purposes for next year. Next slide, please. And then this represents the revenue from those estimates. The gold bar that you see is the total revenue for each year, and then the line that you see is the average estimate. So the good news is that the average estimates have been going up every year. So, for example, in 2017, our average estimate was $4,495. And then in 2018, you see that the average estimate is $4,563. So what that tells us is that the people who are estimating are increasing their support and feeling led to do that each year. However, the revenue, as Emma had mentioned, is staying pretty flat as a decrease in those number of estimates that we're receiving. So I think that highlights some of the importance and some of the background of why we're encouraging participation and asking that people let us know about their plans, because as we see these estimates, people are feeling very generous toward our church. We just need more input from the other members who are not turning in those estimates. And then we've talked about this a lot over the last several weeks, so I won't spend too much time. There are a lot of reasons why participation matters. I think we have a really strong church, and as we can see, we're growing, and a lot of positive things are happening here. And I feel like that participation is a reflection of some of the things that we see in the church. So we want our participation to match that as well. There's always the question of how much I should give, and I can't answer that for you. I did, of course, share the average estimate that we're receiving, and of course that represents people who are doing much more and people who are doing much less. And the hope is that it's equal sacrifice and equal commitment and not an equal dollar amount. So my encouragement there is to think about the gifts that you've been blessed with, both your talents and your treasure, and the ways that you can add to our church through those gifts, and really go out in faith and step out in faith on what you might be able to do for West End in the coming year as you think about what that amount should be for your family, and know that all gifts are appreciated regardless of the amount. As we see, when people join together, so much can happen. It only takes watching one crowdfunding campaign to see how that coming together of support can really make a difference in an organization, and that applies here at our church as well. And I'm going to stay on that last one for just a second. For reasons for giving, we've heard from a lot of our members in ministry moments. If you haven't been to the service yet, you'll hear from Andrew Campbell later today. And one thing I wanted to highlight that maybe hasn't been mentioned in some of those moments is our staff. And as Emma was saying, we want to support the staff who is coming here day in and day out to make West End a possibility for those of us who are members here, people who've dedicated their lives to service of our church. And we want that to remain a piece of our budget every year when we're able to give those increases to staff in their salaries. And it makes me think about in the book of Numbers when God is giving Aaron and Moses instructions to the Levites and the priests about their inheritance, and saying that they won't receive an inheritance of land, but their inheritance will be the Lord, and that it was up to the Israelites to support them in their daily life. So I feel like that is part of our role as members of this church, is to help support these people who have dedicated themselves to our church day in and day out. And so that's something, as we're looking at the budget, we always want to be able to honor that and hope that through your support we'll be able to continue to do that for our pastors and our staff here at the church. Okay. So, how you can help? You can participate in the Faithful Giving campaign. So today is actually our goal of receiving our estimates. We will take our estimates at any time, of course, but we would love to be reaching our goal numbers here today, if possible, simply because we are getting into this budgeting season, and it does give us some confidence in those numbers, to approve those numbers when we have a good feeling of what the congregation will be able to support in the coming year. So I have some estimate cards here if you would like to see me afterwards. Of course, they're available in the pew racks, in Reed Hall, online. It takes about 2 minutes to fill out the online form. So we just encourage you to really give some prayerful consideration to how you'll be a part of our church in the coming year. And as Emma mentioned, giving evenly through the year is also a wonderful thing, so that we see those benefits throughout the year, and keep a little bit more of an even graph rather than that big spike in December. So if that is an option for your family and that's something that works for you, we hope you'll consider that as well. But we're so grateful to everyone who supports this church. We're grateful for all the ways that you support it, and through this Faithful Giving campaign, we hope that we continue to help our church be strong and continue the financial security that we have, and continue the great ministries that we have here that we all love and enjoy and feel passionately about. So thank you very much.
Okay, 2014 United Methodist Survey. What's the most important issue facing the church today? Creating disciples of Christ. It's so simple, we don't think about it. I think the numbers that we saw earlier, folks point out that we all got some work to do, and it's all of us collectively. We need more of us. And here to talk more about spiritual formation, Brandon Baxter and Amy Lynch.
I'm going to set my stopwatch here so I don't go too long. All right. I've got a lot to do in like 3 or 4 minutes. So first thing I want to say is this year my position has changed quite a bit, in the sense that when I came to this church a year and 4 months ago, my position was primarily an associate pastor role and also a programming role. But now I have been charged with overseeing the spiritual formation life of the entire church. So I now have direct reports with children's ministry, youth ministry, young adult ministry. And so I'm trying to get a handle on everything that's happening in terms of spiritual formation at this church. And one of the things I wanted to do for a second was help you dig a little deeper into the Sunday school numbers, simply because we saw an average yearly graph. But Sunday school tends to run on an academic year, sort of like August to December and January through May, and the summer is sort of squirrely. So I want to compare January through May and August to September for the last 5 years real quick, just to give you a better sense of where I'm seeing trends going. The first thing, and if you see numbers in parentheses, that means I took out one set of numbers because it looked like an aberration, like a snow day or something else, and I didn't know historically. So if I had added in those numbers, some of these numbers would be a little bit lower historically. But if you look on average right now for adults in 2018, we're actually about on track, a little lower than we were in 2015. In January through May of this year. And then if you look at the numbers for August to September, we're actually slightly up. We have a little bit better average attendance so far this year, since the beginning of what I would consider to be this year of spiritual formation in Sunday school. And that yearly average you saw a few minutes ago actually failed to show that more Sunday school classes this year chose to participate in the summer series, which meant our attendance didn't get recorded quite the same way. And also, when we had the Way Forward Forum here at the beginning of August, if you were here, you remember this room was packed. Those numbers were not included either. So it sort of made our yearly average look down. But I just wanted you to know that the trend is sort of steady. So I would say that Sunday school for adults is not necessarily growing a lot right now, but it's also not tanking so much. This also reflects the dissolution of 2 strong Sunday school classes in the last year. So we're certainly at a time where we have to start building new Sunday morning groups. For the children, you will see that there was a slight uptick on the graph. Actually, for children, the uptick is more significant. We are seeing an average this fall over last year of about 13 kids on average more, which puts us back in line close to where we were in 2015, which is a good sign. We're seeing some trending in the right direction, which leads me to our next slide, which is youth. Youth has trended down, especially in Sunday school. We expected the youth group to be very small this year for a number of reasons. The pool of potential youth is down from approximately 140 people, that means on membership roll, to 80 that are youth age in Emily's time here. So that's just over 2.5 years. And also, we graduated out 29 active youth and only brought in 16 total confirmands. So that alone means that we were going to have some downtrend. What we need to do is get our programs on a solid footing so that all the growth we're seeing in children's ministry continues to transition over into youth ministry, which is what we're working on right now. But that is not incorrect. Youth numbers have trended down for Sunday school. If you have questions about that, let me know later. I just wanted you to know I'm kind of watching those trends as they appear. One other thing I wanted to speak to really quickly, and before I do that too, I want to say one thing. I want to say that spiritual formation, we need to not just equate that with what happens on Sunday mornings, especially in the culture we live in now, where average attendance on Sundays, where active attendance, demographers will say, is about once to twice a month now in church. And so we're dealing with a new reality where people aren't here on Sundays as much always, but may consider themselves active members. So that's just to say that we have over 40 people in covenant discipleship groups. We have over 80 people that have participated in Wednesday night small groups. We have 21 people in the last year that have done some form of long-term Bible study. And we actually need to be looking at even a broader way of doing spiritual formation outside of just Sunday mornings and also outside of this building, both through technology and also through maybe groups and homes and things like that, which the spiritual formation team's looking at. The next slide real quick, JL. What I'm helping the team do right now, our spiritual formation team, is take our existing mission, which is we believe that West End is called by God to be and become the loving light of Christ, connecting and transforming. And in the next year, what we're working on is articulating a clear path of discipleship, leaning on those 3 key moves, and trying to communicate better with people the ways that they can connect to God, one another, and the world, transform with God and with one another and with the world, and then shine the light of Christ for God and for one another and for the world. And on my next slide, I had an example of kind of how we'll do that. But if you have questions about that, let me know, because I don't want to eat into any more time. And I want to give, I'm going to give Amy a chance to come and talk about one exciting thing we have coming up in the spiritual formation realm in 2019. So if you want to go on and advance to that slide, that would be great, JL.
Good morning. As part of a larger effort to restore our West End tradition of bringing in key teachers and preachers, it is very exciting that we're going to have Bishop Will Willimon here the weekend of March 30th and 31st of this coming year. As many of you know, he is a renowned speaker, a prolific author, and is currently a professor at Duke Divinity School. So our lay team gave him some suggestions or ideas for things to address when he's here, and he chose the topic Following Jesus in the Heart of the City for a Saturday morning forum. He believes that West End is uniquely positioned for ministry in the 21st century as a large downtown church, and so it'll be interesting to hear his comments about this. He will also be preaching both services that Sunday morning. There will be a 3-week series on the prodigal son. Brandon will speak the first week, followed by Carol the second week, and concluding with Bishop Willimon's sermons on the third week. This is part of our Lent theme this year of return, and so I think it will be interesting to see the development of the discussion of that parable through those 3 weeks. So be alert for any registrations for the Saturday morning event. We'll be advertising this to the community, to other churches in the area, and to the Divinity School. So we hope there will be a great turnout for this weekend's events.
Okay, our final area to talk about is this beautiful place that we call home. And any of you who might be new to the church may not realize that about 4 years ago we had this legacy campaign where we raised money to improve and keep this place up to standard. It was very successful. So to talk about this place is Henry Ambrose, our property manager, and John Bryant.
Hello. Hi. My name is Henry Ambrose. I'm the property manager here. I've been here since March, and I'd like to go over a few things in relation to the building and the security that have happened since I've been around. The gym has gotten the floor refinished. It was a little beat up. Everybody can go have a look. It looks really nice. The lighting was also upgraded. We upgraded to LED lights, which uses less electricity, lasts longer. So please, everyone, go have a look. We've also had some new flooring installed in the youth lounge, the youth game room, and in the reception area. The play garden has a new interior divider fence to help the different classes function at the same time for the preschool. We had some exterior work done to the sidewalks on the west lawn. There were a few trip hazards. We had the sidewalk lifted to remove those. There's also a good deal of graffiti around the property when I arrived, both on church property and public property. We've worked to have the majority of that removed. Also, the staff member that's been tasked to head up security. I've attended 2 security-specific seminars this year, one of which was specific to churches. The federal government has some capacity to help public-private entities, and I've reached out to them. They've been here this year and done a site visit, and it was very helpful. Metro Police Department also offers the same services. We're setting up for them to come in early next year and just go over what we have in place. This year we did make some changes to how the doors and gates are locked and unlocked. That is to ensure the safety of everyone that's here. So now we lock most of the doors 10 minutes after the services start. Any door that is unlocked is monitored. That is all I've got, and I'd like to turn it over to John Bryant.
Jill, could you go back one, please? Great. Thanks. Alan asked me to speak briefly about the Legacy campaign, and I know that's perhaps old and tired news to a lot of you, but we have some new folks, hopefully, who've joined, and maybe this will be new for them. I chaired the trustees in 2013, and was fortunate to do a bonus year in 2014 as the chair of the Legacy campaign, and in 15 and 16 as well. And now 18. Our building is an amazing structure and built at great sacrifice during the waning years of the Great Depression, I know, as a lot of you know. Michael Williams wrote this as part of our fundraising material in 2014 and said, "Our physical structure stands as a continued lasting inspiration to both the old and the young, pointing the way to the highest and best in human life. On any given day, in any given week, our church uses its campus and its buildings so that the lives and communities of Nashville and beyond are transformed by our spiritual and physical structure and God's grace. This building needed and needs ongoing maintenance, and Elizabeth talked about the endowment funds. Unrestricted funds for building maintenance in the endowment are fairly limited. So to address maintenance needs, Revel Carroll got us on a good start in 2011 and 12 when she chaired the trustees with what was then called the Triple R campaign, and I can't recall what the R stood for, but renovate, repair, remodel. Great, thank you. Repair, renovate, remodel. And we picked that up in 14. Had a terrific team of volunteers that worked on the campaign. I see lots of folks in here who either hosted or attended a small group gathering. And thank you so much for all your participation. We launched 4 years ago, 4 years and 2 weeks ago. Work started in 15 and was completed latter part of 16. One of the goals was to establish some reserve funds, principally for future roof and mechanical system replacements. And so in addition to the work that we did do, we've been able to raise some money for future needs. Next slide. The legacy campaign work consisted of about 60 discrete projects. A good bit of that was not so visible. One of the big things, though, was the resolution of the water penetration issues. A lot of you noticed plaster damage and paint peeling and things like that in places in the sanctuary and other parts of the building. But we got that stopped with caps for the limestone. The limestone parapets on this building have served as a sponge over about 80 years that just pulled water in. So capping that really did solve a big problem for us. Mechanical system work on HVAC. We got new interior signs, new LED parking lot lights, the kitchen renovation, which required a new grease trap. We had never had a grease trap, so there's a big section of pavement you can tell was cut out of the parking lot where the grease trap went. New elevator, bathroom renovations, fire sprinklers. We had done some sprinkler work in years before, but we finished that out. So the only thing left that's not sprinklered is the sanctuary itself, which we don't have to do, fortunately. You could hit the next slide, please. How much have we spent so far? A little over $4 million. Our goal was to raise about 4.7, and we're right on it. We had pledges of $3.964 million. We've collected about 98% of that so far. And that includes money from some folks who gave over and above their pledge amount. And we have multi-year pledges that are still yet to be paid in the latter part of this year and in 19. Unpledged gifts of a little over $700,000. We've collected 4.6, a little over that, and we have a little over $550,000 in reserve to address some future needs, and zero debt. So great credit to this congregation and its generosity and the many volunteers who worked on this campaign. I think one thing to note is that this can't be just about feathering our nest here. This has to be about using this sacred place to help build God's kingdom on earth here. Thanks again.
Just piggybacking on what John so beautifully said, much of what we've heard this morning has been numbers and statistics, but it's all about the good and faithful stewardship of what we have in this place, both people and facilities, so that, all this has a so that we can continue to share the love of Christ in our community and in our world. So I don't ever want to forget that that's the whole point of all of this good work that these wonderful leaders do and that each and every one of us participates in. And we just feel like it's important for everyone to know these things and to have this information. So thank you so much for coming. I want to highlight a couple more things as we look ahead to 2019. This congregation started the Interfaith Dental Clinic And next year we'll celebrate 25 years of that important ministry. So be on the lookout for information about a celebration as they open a new facility. This congregation helped give birth to that important ministry. A couple of things about Advent and Christmas. A few little changes I want to just give you a heads up on. When you walk in the sanctuary the first Sunday of Advent, everything will be blue and not purple. And if you'll read what I wrote in the Advent brochure for the explanation about that, I think it's going to be beautiful and enhance our worship together. And then the 4 o'clock Christmas Eve service is being tweaked a little bit so that it is a service that is accessible for people of all ages, whether or not you have small children. We'll still have the little ones in costumes and hear the Christmas story through them. But we have some older folks in our congregation who have said, you know, we don't come Christmas Eve because 10:30 is too late and 4 o'clock is for the children. But the 4 o'clock service is for everybody. So help me spread that word and let people know that that will be a wonderful service of worship for everybody. We've had a lot of information, and I don't know if there is time, can't see Alan, for questions or not. I know I need to scoot and get my robe on, but if some of you would like to stay and ask some questions, we'll ask some of you who are able to stay. So I'm going to scoot out. Thank you all so much for being here.
We've got 5 minutes for questions. Does anybody have a question they'd like to ask? George, don't you have a question?
That's a good idea.
Okay, right here.
Yeah, Hi, I noticed that you're saying for the conference apportionment, they're asking for 4% more. Where is some of that going? Because it looked like everything else was more in the 2% range.
That's a good question. Brandon, can you address that?
Apportionments are partially a great mystery of the United Methodist Church. Sometimes we understand how they're being figured out. Sometimes there's a complicated process anyway that relates to both church health, church size, what the district sizes are like, all that. One of the major things that changed in the last year and a half in our little corner of United Methodism is that we went from having 7 districts in the Tennessee Conference to having 5. And so we're now part of a larger Cumberland River district. And I think as they have started to look at the ways that different churches are related to one another, that has affected, to a degree, the apportionment amounts. Apportionments have gone up for quite a few churches, not just us. I can't speak to all the reasons why that is. But if you want to know more, come talk to me or Carol or Pastor Aaron, and we'll try to help you sort out how that might sort of happen year in, year out. In general, a lot of the bigger churches in our conference have been seeing apportionments go up slightly. And that's simply because just like you've seen the cost of business at West End is going up, so the cost of business of being United Methodist is going up in general. And we don't know what's on the horizon, too, with the way forward and things like that. So.
Anybody else? Jeff?
With the endowment at $10 million, what are the specific goals to take that to 15, 20, 25 over the next period of time?
Elizabeth, you got a quick answer for that, don't you?
I'm not sure there are goals other than the planned giving. You know, we certainly want people to continue to give to the endowment, but it's being professionally managed by Morgan Stanley. I mean, that is not the role of the trustee. We're just there to make sure that the corpus is protected.
We want to increase it just to have a bigger number, or do we want to increase it to increase our outreach? Because if we're going to spend 3.5%, if we have 20 million, that would be double endowment spending. So we're trying to increase the amount we can provide. You said 50% with scholarships. We want to provide scholarships.
Well, just to highlight, I think Elizabeth said it's 3%, right?
3.5.
3.5%. So whatever the number is, 3.5% of it, at a minimum, we use to support all kinds of ministries. You know, every year. So if it's a bigger number, there's more dollars. So
How those, if anybody wants to see how those are enumerated, they can see the budget and see all the different ways that money funds different types of ministry.
okay, do we have that available online? I don't know.
I don't know if it's online, but we can.
I've got a little bit right here. Sorry. I'm sorry it's not a slide, but I can tell you that of the $275,000 that we've spent this year, about $15,000 of that has gone to building and grounds. Outreach has been $40,000 plus. Music ministry has been almost $24,000. Education and ministry has been a little over $3,000. Scholarships almost $125,000. General initiatives such as furniture, playground fencing, electronics, radios to allow ushers and the security property personnel to communicate on Sundays, computers, theater microphones, planned giving consultant. Okay, so that's a big general bucket, has been about $23,000. Ministers housing, $43,000. Columbarian, about $3,500. And so that's roughly the way the $275,000 is being spent. Thank you.
One final question, anybody? Okay, well, thank you all for being here.